I'm going to start by giving each of you a minute to set out your stall and tell the people of Kerry why they should vote for you. Deputy Danny Healy-Rae, I'll start with you. Why should the people of Kerry vote for you on Saturday, February the 8th?
Good morning, Jerry, and good morning to all the people out there in the county of Kerry and surrounding. I have been an elected representative since 2003. I have worked tirelessly on behalf of the people that I have been honoured to represent both locally and nationally. I pride myself on being available to the people. I hold over 100 clinics every month, and people know I'm always available. I believe I have an advantage over my competitors as I have an understanding of all the issues that face people in our society, and I can call it as it is because I'm not bound by the shackles of any political party. I'm totally committed to the people of this county, and I understand fully what my role is. That is to work for the people, whether it's an individual, community or county-wide issues. For example, I'm extremely proud that I initiated a bus service to Belfast for people to get their cataracts removed because it was either go to Belfast or go blind. Finally, I'm asking the people to come out and give me their number one vote on the 8th of February.
Okay, Deputy Danny Healy-Rae, thanks very much for that. Brendan Griffin, Minister for State and TD for Fine Gael, why should people vote for you on election day?
Good morning, Jerry, and good morning to everybody listening. And can I first of all to say to all of my fellow candidates, to all 12 others, wish them the very best to look to themselves and their families. It's a tough time running for election, and look forward to the hustings over the next couple of weeks. To the people of Kerry, I would say very clearly, I have worked extremely hard over the last 4 years and also over the last 9 years as their TD, and prior to that as a county councillor. I know every pocket of this county very, very well. I know so many people around this county, and I've worked on their behalf night and day and done everything I could possibly do for them, first of all as their councillor, then as their TD, and now as their minister. I've delivered an awful lot for this county, a huge number of projects, a huge amount of money across all sectors of government, but particularly within my own department, in the Department of Transport, Tourism and Sport. We've seen a doubling of Kerry National Roads figures in the last 2 years since I went into the department, 66% increase in local regional roads increase figures. We've also seen 4.6 million in sports grants coming into the county, more in 2 years than in the whole 10 years prior to that. We've invested heavily in tourism and a number of other areas as well. I want to keep delivering for Kerry, and I think we have a good chance of a ministry in Kerry if I keep working.
Time is up on that. Okay, Norma Moriarty, Councillor Norma Moriarty of Fianna Fáil, why should people vote for you on election day?
Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, listeners. I respectfully asking people to vote for me as opposed to telling them they should vote for me. I put myself on this ticket, put myself forward for election, primarily based on my track record as a community volunteer over many years, and I've been involved in all sorts of grassroots activities throughout that time, also based on my background, my professional background as a learning support teacher, understanding the needs that are there in education, those that affect the most vulnerable in our society in education, their families, but also the need to really truly invest in higher education and outreach programmes. We want to change the face of change the face of rural Ireland, quite frankly, because it has been hammered in terms of decline, and that is a result of policies of successive governments, not just this government, but its predecessor, its immediate predecessor, and many other governments prior to that. We want people to be able to access high-level education and gain employment in that area and remain living in our county, and that means creative, solution-focused activities, not the same humdrum promising everybody everything and not able to deliver for anybody.
Alright, that's Norma Moriarty. And Cleo Murphy of the Green Party, why should people give you the number one on election day?
Thanks, Jerry. Well, I'm Cleo Murphy and I'm standing for the Green Party. I'm standing to represent people in Kerry who want an alternative to the way that they're being represented at the moment, and many of them do. About myself, I'm from Kenmare. I lived in Tralee when I worked as a journalist. I've lived overseas. I've been employed in a multinational company in Ireland. I've worked for myself. I know what it is to be made redundant, and I'm currently working as a family carer. In other words, I have a breadth of life experience that I want to put to good use representing the people of Kerry in Dáil Éireann. The Green Party, we stand for better services in health, housing, education, transport. We have solid policies in all of these areas, and policy is what affects how services are delivered on the ground. We support this Launch a Care plan with an emphasis on getting more primary care centres, and that's particularly important for rural Ireland. We need to attract more tech employers and remote workers to the county, and we need to open up opportunities for the people who are already living here and want to stay here, and we need to develop develop our eco-tourism offering in order to keep the villages around the Ring of Kerry and the Dingle Peninsula and other outlying areas alive. I think Kerry should have a Green Party.
Time is up on that one. That's Cleo Murphy of the Green Party. If you have a view or have any questions to ask the candidates, then do get in touch with us on the show. I'm going to jump straight into it. We have a couple of questions in here of one of the main issues of the early stages of this election, and that's the situation with regards to pensions. Brendan Griffin, I'll start with you on this one. A lot of confusion coming out of your party. There's a perception out there that policies being made up on the hoof. You were caught unguarded with the provision that was made to change the pension age, and you're rowing back in it now. What's your response? You're all over the place in the pension issue.
First of all, just to say that on the doors, and I've been out constantly, literally knocking on doors since last Wednesday week, and this has come up at a lot of doors. People are concerned, and I understand the concerns, and particularly people, for example, who work in labour intensive jobs, they are extremely concerned about what happens to them when they turn 65. This goes back, first of all, to 2010, and it was one of the conditions when the IMF and the Troika came in here, and maybe at the time, I suppose, when 2021 was referred to as the age for 67 being the retirement age, at the time people had more pressing matters, existential questions that were happening at the time in 2010, and this was seen as a long way off. But now here we are, 2021's around the corner.
Jorian Ratmore wants to know, what are the politicians going to do in relation to the pension crisis? Retire at 65 and no pension for 2 years.
So what Fine Gael has moved to do this week is to assure people that we will put in place a transitional payment for people, so that they won't be caught in limbo when they turn 66 until they're 67. And that's something I think that's very welcome, because people are very concerned about, what will happen, how will they pay the bills, how will they have money for those, for that time in between the time they're retiring and in between the time that they reach the age of 67 or further down the line, 68. So I do think, though, that this is a massive conversation that needs to be had now. We need to really address this issue, and I do feel actually that the proposal of a stakeholders forum actually isn't a bad idea at all, and that was made yesterday by SIPTU, I think, and a number of the unions are backing it, and I actually think it would be a good idea. Hear from all of the people, and let's have a consensus on this.
Should you not have done this before now? You were in power the last 9 years. As I said, look,
this is something that was introduced in 2010. Eamon O'Queeve was actually the minister at the time.
You've been the government since then, and other parties have called for it to reduce bills in the Dáil, and you didn't move in it.
This has been this has been out there for the last 10 years, and now it has come to the fore. And look, it is an issue that has arisen now during the campaign, and yes, it should have been dealt with now, but it has come to the fore now, and it is being dealt with. And I think that this is something that, again, I think we can find a very positive outcome on, and I would be very keen to hear from all stakeholders.
Norma Moriarty, Fianna Fáil as well, making promises on the hoof during this campaign, reacting to the issue rather than leading on it.
Can I just say, in relation to that specific issue, I brought a motion to full council, I think it was back either in September or October, in relation to that, because I had constituents who came into me and who highlighted the issue. There were a couple of retirements that were happening in the local hospital, and this anomaly became very evident. So we put forward that motion. In fairness, it was seconded by Marie Maloney of the Labour Party. It was endorsed by every member of the council to basically highlight the farcical situation, number one, where you had to apply for job seekers when you were retired. I mean, that in itself is just ridiculous. But obviously then the fact that you were going to be left in limbo, given the restriction on how long you can apply for job seekers at that stage, and that you were going to be left completely, at your own, at the mercy of whatever the elements were. So it obviously has to be rectified. Detail is important, and when legislation is put in, whatever party puts it in, you have to properly examine the impact of that legislation, and that would certainly be done with a stakeholders forum, and I would, I think everybody would welcome that and examine these things. We do have a pensions issue. We have, people are living longer. We have a significant burden. But when people entered into their pensions 35, 40 years ago, they were planning for retirement at 65. It is completely wrong to pull the rug out from underneath them at this stage. It's the people who are currently entering the workforce, those of us who are in it, who should be looking to over time phase in where the length of life expectancy and so on, and be able to afford that. That's where we have to look at that.
Okay, Danny Healy-Rae, what's your view on this issue? What would you like to see happen? Back to 65?
Well, what I'd say to you, Johnny, I'd like that fair play would be given to the people that have worked for 40 years of their lives, that have paid into their pensions, and to think that that the government are now asking them to go on the dole for 2 or 3 years. And the sad fact about it is, if their spouse or their partner is earning a good wage, these people will be denied of getting any bob from the state. And after paying into their pensions for 40 years. And to see pensions, this government have let so many people down in relation to the CE workers, supervisors, to the women that stayed at home to raise
had to leave the workforce.
Had to leave the workforce. And that Minister Button at the time, she completely abdicated and ruled against the women of Ireland that raised their families and gave so much to Ireland, to the county, to our country. And this again now, I've never seen people so angry on the doorsteps, in the bars, around the streets. What are you going to do about our pensions? I can tell you one thing, Jory, that if I get back up there again, I will ensure that their voice will be heard in the chambers, in the floor of the Dáil, because they're being wronged with this, and the government are making laws and doing things without looking to see what the repercussions are.
Okay.
And you see, the other side of it is, if people want to work, and beyond the 65 and want to do that, they should be allowed to do that. But the people that want to retire and that are maybe strangled and torn from giving 40 years working hard, they should be entitled to draw their pension after paying it.
Cleo Murphy, what's the Green Party's position on this issue?
I've been inundated, Jerry, in the last while with emails from people about this, and I'm fully behind the Stop 67 campaign. I've also been listening to it on the doorsteps. Of course, it's not possible for people to live on thin air when they're forced to retire. Choice has to be a huge part of it. If you want to stay working, stay working. But if you're not going to be working, you have to be supported. I don't fully understand the transitional payment idea that Fine Gael are putting forward. It's either a pension or it's not a pension, especially if it's going to be the same amount. I would go back to services. When people are in that vulnerable situation, we also need services. And I would also expand it out to say it's not just the people who are caught in this retirement bind. There's a lot of people looking for state support because they're vulnerable, because of mental illness, because of disability, because they're carers, and they're not getting the support we need. It's a cruel system, and we need to be more, we need to be kinder in terms of the people who are vulnerable in this society and to look after them properly.
Okay, I want a quick answer to this next question. It's in relation to pension. This is from Donal O'Reilly, gets in touch from Killarney, says, will the elected personnel commit to removing the unequal application of the supplementary pension scheme for the public sector as opposed to the job seeker scheme for the private sector workers? This is a provision that was put in place at the time by Brendan Howlin, where public sector workers were insulated from this by a supplementary pension scheme where private sector workers are forced to go on job seekers. Brendan Griffin, would you change that?
Well, obviously, I think that's something that would be an ideal issue to be discussed by that stakeholders forum, but it's something again within the party that I would be raising as well.
Danny Healy-Rae?
I'm sick of these forums and reports and all this. Fair play must be given to all sectors of our community.
So would you change it?
I'd level the playing field and ensure
everyone's treated the same. Norma Moriarty?
I would be for changing it, yes, sir.
Okay. Cleo Murphy?
Can I just say to Danny, policy is made and things are done through reports and stakeholders meetings, and if you're not going to be part of that, you won't be part of what's happening.
Forums and enough is enough, and people are waiting for reports and waiting for...
But still in all, Danny, you need to be in there and participating as part of that if you want to make changes.
In every forum that takes place, but enough is enough now. People are looking for an answer in relation to that pension.
There are anomalies here, and I think that would be a good way to...
I'll level the pitch there too.
There are anomalies here, and I think a good way to iron out any of the issues that are there in unforeseen circumstances would be through bringing all the parties together around the table and to iron out these things once and for all, and to deal with the issue in a cool and collected manner.
Sure. I'd agree with that, but as somebody who has worked in the private sector, both as a PAYE worker and as a self-employed person, yes, people need to be looked after the same way as public service workers are.
Okay, I want to ask you a question in from a listener. Says, and this is in relation to comments, I suppose, from your party colleague who's running as well, Mike Kennelly, the statement that the health system should be privatised if after 2 years of a reform period doesn't work. It brings us on to the health service. A pretty radical proposal by Mike Kennelly. Do you support it?
Well, look, Fine Gael is entirely entirely supportive of the public health system, and we're entirely supportive of the Sláinte Care project as well, and we want to invest heavily public finances into the public health service, and that is our path. Of course, look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, everyone's entitled to their view and how the challenges that are there can be addressed, and yes, absolutely there are huge challenges, but we're committed to Sláinte Care. And actually, Jerry, in the pre-election debate of 2016, some people scoffed when I said that actually my vision for the health service would be that we would bring all parties together after the general election and try to find a consensus, take the politics out of health and try to find a way forward. And actually that's what happened subsequently, and I think that is the right approach, but it now needs to be backed up with the investment, and I think the investment will only come through the maintaining a strong economy and the management of the economy, and that's why this election is critical, and that's one of the key things. Without a strong economy, we won't be able to invest in the health service.
We've record waiting lists, we have record numbers of people on trolley, we have a very real fear expressed by some consultants and other people at University Hospital Kerry that the hospital is being downgraded. What's your response to that?
Well, I'm extremely frustrated with the progress or the lack thereof in many areas of the health service that we've seen. That said, there are areas that are working very well, but the particular pinch points, particularly emergency departments, outpatient waiting lists, it's not good enough, and we need to do better. And what I would say is that, you know, we have had over the last 9 years in government, probably 7 of those where we've been fighting a rearguard action in terms of getting the basics, in terms of managing the economy, getting the public finances right, getting them out of deficit. What we're looking for is a normal term of government where we have actually decent public finances to put into our services, like the health service.
Are you not asking people to trust the same people who have mismanaged that element of it?
What I would say is we have managed the economy extremely well, and we know we have problems that haven't been addressed, such as the health service. We haven't made enough progress on that, and such as housing, for example. We need to do better on that.
Trust us, we'll get it right the next time.
There is a plan there, the Sláinte Care plan. It's been signed up to pretty universally within the political, within the body politic, and it is, at least I think we have a great opportunity now in the coming years to actually pump the money in to make sure the Sláinte Care is a success.
Okay. Norma Moriarty.
Without a shadow of a doubt, health has been the single most raised issue on the doorsteps, and I've been out canvassing since late October, early November. People are really fearful. They're very worried. They also believe that they know, in fact, that it is not functioning correctly and it is in crisis. Sláinte Care has been signed up to right across the political spectrum, but it's not being implemented. There isn't enough of it there, and money isn't the key to everything, by the way. This isn't all about money.
We're spending record levels of money.
It's
about management and somebody knocking heads together to make changes, and that's not happening.
And it actually requires real leadership.
Will Fianna Fáil do that?
I believe they can, because I actually think this particular government, the next government that's going to be formed, has to be honest with the people and say, we want to prioritise health, and there are going to be tough decisions that will have to be made in order to do that, and real leadership will bring the people with them. They will go with them. Trust them, communicate properly with them, and they will go with them. And can I just be precise about a few things? I stood last Sunday evening on a doorstep with 2 parents who are absolutely bereft of the fact that their daughter, whom they scrimped and saved to put through medical college, is now in New Zealand. She doesn't want to be there, but she's there. Not because of pay, but because of the structures in hospitals that made her far too onerous at far too young an age. She was going to be thrown under the bus, and was thrown under the bus when instances occurred. That's a very, very poor structure. We have a system where people they're not protected within their workforce. They're basically, things will go wrong, people will get sick, and things will happen, and there are things that only so much the medical science can do. But we have people, nurses, frontline staff, doctors, who are basically being the system washes the hands of them, and they find themselves in front of disciplinary committees and possibly subject to legal action and so on. There isn't enough of protection of those staff. They're fleeing because it's overstressed. Also, they're not getting rest times, they're not getting break times. All of the workplace conditions that they should be entitled to, they're being broken within our hospital system because it's so stretched.
Okay, Cleo Murphy, what's your response to that query, privatisation of the health service, and what will the Green Party do?
I think it is
into power?
Utterly heartless suggestion from Fine Gael that the health service would be privatised.
Just to clarify, it's not direct Fine Gael policy, it's the idea from Mike Kennelly.
Mike Kennelly of Fine Gael, I think it's heartless in the extreme. Just to say that the Green Party are fully subscribed to Sláinte Care. Obviously different parties are placing different emphasis on different parts of it, and ours is very much about getting the primary care into the community. You can't do that until you have the GP problem solved. You have to renegotiate the contracts with the GPs. And
Fine Gael are saying they have renegotiated the contracts.
The doctors aren't, the GPs aren't wildly happy happy about that. I mean, if there wasn't a problem, there wouldn't be a problem. Do you know what I mean? If it was sorted out smoothly. I agree that pay is not always the issue, that morale is a huge part of it, and to bring the GPs back home and get the primary care centres working in the community to take the pressure off the hospitals would be the way forward.
Okay, Danny Healy-Rae, your view. I'll let you back in. Danny Healy-Rae, your view. How do we fix it? You're running buses up because of a particular problem, but how do we fix it going forward?
I'll tell you, Jory, what the view of the people out there is, and of myself as well. Since half the layers of managers that are employed in the HSE, send half of them home. And because as it is, they're all bosses and there's no boss. Is it right, Jory, that a woman of 92 years of age went into Tralee yesterday morning and it's suspected that she has a clot, that she's on a trolley still this morning? Is it right that there's no respite for people? There's actually no respite at all. And just to stay with the beds, there's so many beds, half the beds in Khmer Community Hospital not open. There's 10 beds in Dingle not open. We were promised 38 beds in Tralee last year. I'm asking, where are they?
Yeah.
And why? How do we think we can't have people on trolleys if we haven't beds for them?
Yeah,
and the worst part of the thing, Jory, it's gone worse than that now. People are asking when they're in chairs for 24 hours, can you get me a trolley and get me something, get me out of the chair?
But what will you do to fix it if you're re-elected?
I said,
how will you fix it?
We have to employ more frontline staff, doctors and nurses. That you can manage without them. They're strangled behind that trying to manage. And you have to provide more beds. And the beds, you see, there was beds closed down, and we were told that 38 beds were going to be open in Tralee. That would account for a lot of them. And the beds in Khmer and Dingle, and we haven't the district hospital in Khmer, in Killarney, fully utilised either. And we're promised a new hospital there, but God only knows when that'll happen after the debacle with the Children's Hospital, because it have every pound and shilling that was for everything else is gone into that place above there.
Norma Moriarty, I'll let you back in.
Yeah, okay. Recruiting staff is the key thing, but we're hemorrhaging staff. We're hemorrhaging those skilled, trained professionals out of the country because of the conditions that they're being forced to work in. We also have a government, unfortunately, that politicised the GP cards and medical cards to the healthiest cohort of our population, who are young people. Listen to the professionals. The GPs have pleaded with you not to do that because they're already overwhelmed with people who are calling. We've got older people who actually can't get an appointment with their GP now for 2 weeks and 3 weeks at a time, and because they're flooded with people.
Okay, Brendan Griffin, a lot of criticism for the government. I'll let you back in briefly. Your answer to those criticisms of your mismanagement of the health service, of that element of it.
I would accept that the health service is nowhere near where it should be in terms of what the people deserve and what they would expect of a modern healthcare service. I was in the emergency department in very early January. I went in to meet with staff, with the senior consultants, management in UHK, and I said it to you actually on air, it was the worst I've ever seen. Now look, there was a particularly bad flu outbreak, but we know that consistently the ED there has been under severe pressure in the last 2 to 3 years in particular. And as I said, what we need here, I think, is the investment to match the problems. We do need, I think, more. We absolutely need more frontline staff. We need to pay those people better. Again, that would be done through the appropriate channels, but also as well, look, the reforms have to take place, and Sláinte Care sets out a number of reforms across the board, and that has to be pursued. And I think that we need everybody on board here with this to sort this out once and for all, because for decades there have been huge challenges in the health service, and successive governments have failed to actually get on top of the problems, and we need to do this for all of our people, because it's just not clear.
Very briefly.
I just think it's less about pay and more about management and morale, and the beds do exist. It's the people that we need to get back in, staff we need to get.
A listener gets in touch with us and asks this question. It goes to taxation issues and policies of different parties after this election. Alan wants to know, what are the candidates' positions on the universal social charge? It was supposed to be a temporary measure. I'll start with you, Norma Moriarty, Fianna Fáil, on this one. What will Fianna Fáil do to the USC if you get into power?
Look, Micheál Martin made it clear that the USC can't be scrapped quickly. We have become dependent on it, quite frankly, as government, as in terms of exchequer funding. It was supposed to be a temporary measure. Like a lot of taxation, when it's introduced, a dependency is built up on it. It will have to be something that will be phased out. But look, in my position in relation to taxation is I want to see a country where we have decent services and decent public services, and I'm meeting people continuously who also want to have decent public services. In order to do that, taxation is our means of doing that. It has to be fair taxation and equitable taxation, and there has to be minimum, no waste, quite frankly, absolutely no waste. People you'll get them to come along with you when you have that situation. Again, harking back to the health situation, how many people are scrimping and saving to have private health insurance? Whereas if your taxation covered a really properly functioning public health service, you wouldn't necessarily have to have private health insurance then. That in itself would represent a huge savings. So tax well spent, providing good services, is something people will buy into.
Okay, Cleo Murphy?
Yeah, we do need money to pay for services, but I would be in favour of seeing that USC being lifted from lower paid people who are really, really struggling. I think the money can come from other places. Money never disappears, it always goes somewhere else, so it's a matter of bringing it back from somewhere else, and it isn't a matter of taking it on the backs of people who are really struggling on low level salaries. So yeah, I'd prefer to see it go from the lower levels, but we probably can't do without it fully for the time being.
Okay, Brendan Griffin?
Yeah, well, our party will be launching the manifesto today, and there'll be a full range of tax measures there in that. Look, I suppose what we've tried to do since coming into office, even in 2011, one of the very earliest things that we've done was, reduced the USC burden on some of the very lowest earners, took a number of people out of the net completely, and subsequently in a number of different elections, budgets rather, tried to reduce the various rates at different points, and also as well bring about tax equalisation for the self-employed. So we're almost there now. We've done it over a number of steps, and the final step hopefully will be done in the forthcoming budget as well, so that the self-employed people are paying the same rate and have the same credits. What I certainly would like to see is that, those families who are hitting the top rate of tax at a very low point, relatively speaking, that they will get a break, because they are the same people who are finding it very, very hard to make ends meet with childcare costs, with all of the other costs that are there as well. But at the same time, we can't
increase the amount that they can earn before they hit the top rate of tax.
That would certainly be my view, and would be the party's view. But at the same time, obviously, of course, we have to be careful not to undermine the tax base of the country, and we have huge service deficits there, particularly as we referred to there in health. We also know that we're going to have to spend a lot more again in the years to come on housing. So it's about striking a balance. It's about being responsible, not undermining the tax base, but at the same time giving people who are working extremely hard a little bit of a break, and giving them a better chance to pay their bills and to provide for the future.
Danny Healy-Rae, what's your view on the USC?
This is a seriously cruel tax, and when it was implemented first, the government of the day promised that it would be lifted off the people when the country was turned around. Here we have Deputy Minister Griffin saying the country is turned around, and that everything is fine with the finances.
Which government introduced it, Danny?
Look,
who introduced it?
You're the minister of the day, and you said I didn't interrupt you at any time. And if we're going to learn to interrupt you,
it's an open debate. In fairness, Danny, let him finish his point, and we'll come to you then. Danny, finish your point.
You're saying that the finances of the country are open, that if the economy turned around.
You're making a charge.
Let him finish, Brendan. Let him finish.
And the people out there are driven down to the ground by carbon tax, property tax. And they were promised that this tax would be lifted off them. And they say, go to the carbon tax. We have the Green Party, and if they'll get their way, this county will be only for badgers, bachelors, and bullocks. And there's broils going into their eyes. And then we Fianna Fáil roaring across the chamber every day asking the Taoiseach to introduce carbon tax. Who's it going to hurt the most? The farmer. And yet when we look up at the sky, at any minute, there's 7,500 planes flying over us. There's no word at all about that.
Okay.
The Chinese are drawing coal as hard as they can from Poland and Australia, and they can't get it on land quick enough, and they're building power stations, for coal burning power stations to create energy.
Just to bring back to USC,
I went to America for 3 days to see my uncles and aunts.
Did you fly,
my
Danny?
brothers and sisters. And the biggest Jeeps, V8s, and vehicles. That's what they're driving.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
And
understand
we're
that.
being told that we must drive,
Okay.
get
All
a
right.
green card to bring
Brendan,
us from
I'll allow
Dublin
you back in.
to Kerry,
Your
or
question.
from Cork
Can
to-
you
to-
answer?
to-
Can you
to
answer
Kerry.
Brendan Griffin's question?
You have to be fair and practical.
Who brought in the tax in the first place? The USC. Which government brought in the tax in the first place?
It was the Fianna Fáil government.
That you supported right to the bitter end.
And the thing about universal social charges,
I
it
know,
shouldn't
but
be
you're in
universal.
there, right?
1 second.
Okay.
That's the reality,
1 second.
Danny.
Allow Danny
You-
to respond.
Danny, you were a councillor. No, Danny. I'm saying you were. No.
Danny,
Excuse
in
me
all
now.
fairness, Danny, in all fairness,
Disgraceful, Danny. Disgraceful. You were a county
Hold on
councillor,
a
a public
second now.
rep at the time, Danny, and that's all I'm referring to. You supported the right to the bitter end, Danny. And you can't.
I want the government.
You were a
to-
county councillor that supported that government, right to the bitter end, Danny.
I
And
want
Danny,
I
I think it's
want
disgraceful.
government
The
to
charge,
start.
the charge you've just made is absolutely disgraceful, Danny. Absolutely disgraceful. We're trying to have a mature debate here amongst 4 aspiring TDs,
That's it.
and I think for you to bring that into it is just beneath you. But anyway, the point I would make is that was a huge shock to the tax system when it was introduced, and what we need now, I think, are steady adjustments in terms of moving forward. The last thing our economy needs is a massive shock again. We've been working, and our record shows it, over the last 9 years, we've done our very best to reduce the tax burden on people. We're trying to do that further, but it has to be done gradually. It has to be done in such a way that it does not have an
Okay.
adverse impact on public
Cleo
services.
Murphy, first allow you back
Yeah.
in.
No, I
Respond
have-
to the charge about carbon tax in the Green.
Yeah, absolutely. Rural Ireland is not thriving at the moment. The manner in which we're doing things in rural Ireland is not sustainable. If we want to keep people living on the land, and we do, we're going to have to change the way we do things, and we should be changing them ahead of time. And Manny's the farmer is now taking steps, particularly in places like the Bride Valley up in North Cork, where dairy farmers are introducing biodiversity measures, the winter programming up in the Burren. There are farmers here in Kerry who I had a farmer joining the Green Party in the last month, Danny. He's got bog outside near Castle Island, and he's not getting properly looked after for it. We're looking for ways to keep rural Ireland open. There are other things we're going to have to do, because right now things are not
your
working
response
for the
to
beef farmer.
Danny's charge, you'll close down rural Ireland. You
But
obviously
sure,
reject that.
but you're no, Danny, leave me at it now.
finish,
No,
Danny.
Let her finish, let her finish,
Danny,
let her finish.
leave me at it.
Let her finish,
Rural
Danny.
Ireland is closing down all by itself with no assistance from the Green Party. What the Green Party is offering is ways where we may be able to adapt and change and survive and continue. And I am from rural Ireland, and I want to see it continuing.
Okay, Norma Moriarty.
Can I just say there, and we have a very respectful, good working
We do.
relationship. There are good intentions behind many of the Green policies, but the fact of the matter is people are very fearful of them. There are people out there who, and they can point to examples there. You're talking about changing our ways as if there's a future way of doing things that is going to be better. Perfectly honest with you, we need to go back to some of the practices that were ignored, and go back to some of the practices that part of Green policy actually sidelined. We have commonage not too far from here, where there's forests that are 3 foot deep and people can't walk through them. We have a situation, we just had it there in Australia, where it was primarily as a result of successive Green Party policies.
No, sorry,
Hold on a second.
Norma,
No,
can't
let me
happen.
make the point.
Let her
Let me
finish,
make the
let her
point.
finish.
The place is literally burning. The knowledge, the management structures that were often there, the management practices of the Aboriginals, the indigenous population, were actually being overridden. Managed, controlled burning of places, having fire bills in place. We need to go back to having many of those in this country. Managed, done sensibly, done properly.
Like they do in the Burren.
The National Parks and Wildlife Service have been advocating for this, many of their members. We had a situation here where we had a very dry summer 2 years ago. Had there been fires and forest fires that went out of control at the time,
Yes, but Norma,
huge swathes of areas would have been devastated and
Very
destroyed.
What
briefly,
happened
Cleo,
in
respond to
Australia?
that.
What happened
Very
in
quick
Australia
question.
is happening because there is drought, and drought is happening because there is climate change. That's why the fires are happening.
That's rubbish,
It is not rubbish, Danny.
Gosh, haven't been.
It is not rubbish.
The grass
It's
hasn't
happening
been burning
because
for years.
it hasn't. It's happening
Untold
because
burning
of
is what we're
drought.
asking for.
The fact of the
And
matter
we're
is
not being allowed to do
there
that.
are traditional farming practices that should be acknowledged and respected. There are the old style farming practices where you had small herds of various cattle, sheep, whatever it was, and they farmed and managed the land in a very sustainable manner.
Yes.
In a very healthy healthy manner. It was good for rural Ireland because you had people living on the land and they were able to survive and have a decent income. There's a lot that we need to do in terms of payment policies to ensure that we can support that as well.
And that's what the Green Party's in favour of.
Good.
Supporting the farmers to stay on the land.
And I want to say also in terms of animal welfare as well, and Fianna Fáil are looking to introduce the suckler payment because that's the right. There are many people who are actually suffering in regard to that.
Yeah.
Small farmers, if you have a decent, at least 200 per head suckler payment linked to animal welfare, that's
what you're promising. Danny, very briefly.
Yes. First of all, what's wrong with the burn is we were promised that we could burn in the month of March. And this government promised us that, supported by Fianna Fáil. They turned around and they stopped us from burning in March. And they say, if you had controlled burning, you wouldn't have these massive...
We don't have controlled burning, we have out of control burning.
Gas fires. And you're the very people that suggested the way to manage the transport is to park 2 or 3 cars in the village and let them there for the people from Mangerton or from Shandrum or wherever, that 3 cars would do the whole
and
parish.
we're the people who want an improvement in public transport.
Them are the ridiculous things that they're coming out with, and that's why the people of Kerry can't trust the Greens. And the other thing is, they're very worried about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael as well because they're trying to be greener than the Greens.
We'll see what happens. We will be talking about that, Danny. I'll stop you there. We will be talking about the context of governments coming in on the health service. I attended A&E 2 weeks ago, went in on a Tuesday evening, saw the triage nurse and the doctor. Doctor told me to come back on Tuesday morning for an ultrasound. When I returned on Tuesday morning, I still had to go through the triage nurses again and repeat the process of the evening before. That's duplication and time wasting. Again, that's management of the health service. Another listener says, we need more cardiologists for children. My granddaughter is on a 22-month waiting list for Crumlin. We have no one to help us. We're trying to do this alone. Another listener gets in touch as well, not happy with the amount of waiting times. His family had to bring him into casualty. Brother terminally ill. Family had to bring him to casualty 3 weeks ago, where he was told he would be 11 hours waiting for a trolley. His family decided to bring him home. That's the, I suppose, level of frustration that's out there about the health service. Just a quick mention, our competition qualifier for staycation is Jackie Holly from Tarbert. We'll do the draw right before the end of the programme for the overall prize for Murphy's Townhouse and Bar and Lord Khmer's Restaurant at the end of the show. In the time that's left, I want to talk about issues to do with if ye get elected, what will ye do? Danny Healy-Rae, if you get elected to Dáil Éireann, and there's a strong possibility at the moment, the way the polls are going, that Fianna Fáil will be the biggest party, I'm sure. Micheál Martin, you're saying he hasn't already, but if he puts the call to you to support his government, would you do it? And would you be looking like other independent deputies for a senior ministry if that was to happen for Kerry?
First of all, Johnny, I'm not re-elected yet.
And look, I understand. In the time, I understand all of that. I understand all of ye are humbly asking the voters to give ye their number one. I don't want to go through. I'm talking about the real politics of the situation. I think the voters would like to know a little bit about your intentions if ye are elected, in terms of the formation of a government and the chance for Kerry to have a ministerial portfolio. What would you do?
Yes, I will talk to everyone and anyone. But there are red line issues for me, and I'd say most of inside here and most of the people of Kerry know what they are.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spell them out here now.
No.
But I will talk to everyone and anyone. I gave 70 days in the talks for putting the government together.
That's right.
Day. I fell off for the last day because most of the stuff that I asked to be put in
wasn't going to be delivered.
Left out by the minister's party.
Yes.
And I got sick of them and walked out because all the work that we'd done for 70 days,
it came to naught.
If you know what they said to me, Johnny? They said that we have more members in our party, and they don't want this.
If you're offered a ministry, will you take it for Kerry?
Listen, look, I have to get elected.
It's a simple question, yes or no. If you're offered a ministry for Kerry, will you take it? If the opportunity arises,
if it will help the people of Kerry, I'll do whatever is needed.
You'll take it. Okay, Brendan Griffin, you're looking for a senior ministry, obviously. You look to talk to everybody, but you're ruling out Sinn Féin. Why?
Look, first of all, I will be respectfully asking the people of Kerry to re-elect me. As a minister
of state, we understand all that.
I've done my very best, Jerry. I think I've proven that I've delivered for the county across the boards. I've done my very best, and I've put my heart and soul into the job, and I will absolutely be seeking a senior ministry because I know that would help the people of Kerry.
Why won't you talk to Sinn Féin? the numbers dictate it, if Pat Daly's elected
Can I
here in this
just say,
county,
he brought
why
in
would
the
you? Danny, we'll stop
4.5%,
now. We'll let him finish. He didn't interrupt you. He didn't interrupt you. Danny, with respect, Danny, he didn't interrupt you. Danny, he didn't interrupt
No,
you.
actually,
Brendan,
first of all, that's a matter for the Department of Finance. Second of all, Danny, actually, it wasn't. Why wasn't it supported day one by your brother in the Dáil? Why didn't he even vote for the introduction of the 9% VAT day one?
Okay.
I still haven't been answered that after 2 years. But anyway, could I just say again, being interrupted here again?
Danny, he didn't interrupt you. I'm trying to answer that. Danny, I'd have to ask you to stop talking, please. You're not being respectful to the other candidates.
Of the fact there are people all over Kerry listening to this morning, and all they're hearing here is shouting and roaring. I'm conscious as well. There's people in transition year classes listening to this, and they're hearing a politician shouting and roaring. That's not how you do politics. That's not how you do public office. You do it through discussion. You do it through dialogue. You do it through putting good suggestions, positive, constructive proposals
on the question of dealing with Sinn Féin. I understand your point you've made. Why won't your party work with Sinn Féin if it results in senior minister for you in Kerry?
The party position at present is that there are too many issues that we are completely at odds on. But look, what I want to see is a stable government for this country, and certainly I want to see a senior ministry for this county. It's easy to sit in the fence like Danny. I want to get in there, get stuck in, and do my best.
Norma Moriarty, what will you do if you're elected? What will Fianna Fáil do? Will you deliver for Kerry if you're elected?
Absolutely, we'll deliver for Kerry, and we'll show leadership. And it won't be about giving empty promises and telling everybody they can have everything for nothing and that all taxation is bad. If we don't actually have money, we can't provide services. But I do want to come back. You predicated your question to Danny with if you're elected. Danny was elected. And if we were in a position where you'd be offered a ministry, they were offered a ministry. They funked it. It's as simple as that. You were.
And he had the opportunity to have a...
There's only two
He could have had half the ministers. Fianna Fáil could have had half the ministers.
Let her finish her point. I'll let you back in. Danny, I'll let you back in. People aren't hearing anything. I'll let you back in.
There are only two plausible scenarios here. You had the de facto leader of the 70 days of negotiations for the independent group, which was Michael Healy-Rae. Danny was there at his side. Every single news report, we saw them to the forefront. At the end of it, they told us that Michael tried to tell us that he wasn't offered a ministry, and yet everybody around him seemed to get access to a ministry or a junior ministry. Either he's a very poor negotiator, or he was offered it and he refused it. And I know which of those scenarios I believe.
Okay,
it's simple.
Finally, ask me on Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, a grand coalition was put out there by Leo Varadkar. Would you be in favour of doing business in a coalition if it delivered ministries for Kerry?
I wouldn't be in favour of a grand coalition between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I actually don't. I don't believe it would be good for the country.
Okay, Cleo Murphy, the Green Party. If you're elected, what would you do in government?
Well,
what would you think for Kerry? What would you be able to achieve? Would you get a junior ministry?
I was asked this question by the journal.ie as to what would you do for your first 100 days in the Dáil, and I said I'd show up, which is more than some people around this table think is important. I think it's important to be in the chamber. I do think if the Greens are in government, it does look like we're going to do very well. It would be vitally important that Kerry would have a Green voice in Dáil Éireann, and I would like to be that.
Okay, Danny, you respond to that charge about the ministry the last time round.
I will, of course. First of all, it is a known fact that Deputy Griffin was not going to get any ministry from Innikinny. But he made sure that he sent up a number of his people here from Kerry and ensured that Innikinny wouldn't ask Michael Healy-Rae to come on board.
That is completely false.
Evidence for that?
I'm not going to give names.
That is absolutely false.
And Michael Healy-Rae was not offered the ministry, and I know that.
We've reached a new low. We've reached a new low this morning now.
Danny,
very important. Danny, a very important point. A very important. I'll let you back in on that, Brendan. But a very important point on this radio, Michael Healy-Rae has said, and I had both of you on the air one day talking about this. Michael Healy-Rae said that Enda Kenny came to him and talked to him about the Rural Affairs Ministry, effectively offered it to him. The response from Michael was, it wasn't. He offered it to me, but it wasn't his to offer at the time because he had no government formed. Now, following on from that, you declared on this programme that you wouldn't vote for Enda Kenny as Fine Gael. So
that's incredible.
You respond. I won't name those people. For that
name them, Denny.
I won't name them.
No, Jerry, are we in space?
Can you? No, hold on, Brendan. I'll allow you. I'll allow Brendan respond. I will. Danny, stop. I will allow Brendan respond. Brendan, respond to that.
Well, do you know what? If I had that influence, wouldn't you think I'd be first of all asking for a ministry for myself? No. Do you know what, Denny? No, we're in a desperate space here. That's worse than anything Donald Trump would come out with. That is just. I ask you to withdraw that now. There is no foundation for that. That is a complete lie. It's a complete and utter lie. lie. And
back.
if
But
we're,
this
if we're
is
in this
the kind
space
of-
now in
this
Kerry
is what
politics,
you're-
it's a
this-
sad
standing by
day.
it.
It's a sad day for the
Okay,
county.
he's not
that it-
withdrawing.
It's a
This
sad
is
day
the
for the
kind
county
of
that a
squabbling.
TD.
This is the kind of squabbling that the people of Kerry do not need, and that's
Absolutely.
why they need a change in the kind of people they're sending up to
It's a sad
represent
day
them
for
in
Kerry
Dáil Éireann.
politics if a TD comes into a studio and makes that type of allegation, a complete and utter fabrication, a total lie, and gets away with it and won't withdraw.
He's been challenged by you, so he's not getting away with it.
I will ask you so. I will ask you so. Name these people. Name these people that you're referring to, because it's a complete fabrication. And what I did is I absolutely worked to make sure I got a ministry for this county, and that's what I'll do again. I won't sit in the fence and take the easy option like the others did, because I believe in representing the people of this county who put their trust and faith in me on a number of occasions, doing the very best I can do.
Okay.
And you can only do that, I think.
Leslie, just
No,
one
we're
thing
actually
we need to
final word.
change.
We're over time. Final word.
Taking responsibility is what this is all about. You can't promise people that you can do everything at the same time. People are not stupid. They have intelligence and they have integrity. We can be honest with the electorate and we can tell them, look, we offer a set of priorities here and things are not great. One of my biggest gripes with the current government is that they're constantly telling us that things are great. They're not. They're really, really difficult.
Fianna Fáil
But good leadership
have
will
not
make
gone
it
up
forward.
at all the last time
Okay,
because they
very good.
abstained.
We're going to have to leave
one
it
last
there.
chance to withdraw that remark.
Okay.
Can we give Danny one last chance to withdraw that allegation?
He's not
Yeah, because
withdrawing
you told a blatant lie here. You told a blatant lie. You're lying. You lied.
We're going to have to leave it there. I'm afraid. We're going to have to leave it there. That's the end of the vote. We're way over time. We're thanks to the candidates. We have another debate next week on the show. Stay tuned for the 11th Our competition winner for this morning is Jackie Holly from Tarbert, today's winner for the Staycation competition. Well done to you, Jackie. You were picked out of all correct entries and you get that prize for Lord Kinmare's and Murphy's.
You're not
car
lying
in
to
College
me, Danny,
Street
you're lying
in
to the people,
Killarney.
Kerry.
Stay tuned for
I
that.
never mind
on the
and
way.
don't think they will call me a liar and then I'll take it from
We're off air,
Never
lads.
did.
We're off air.
I never lied to anyone. That's what happened. You were getting nothing from kidding, but you send them up all right to stop him. I'll give you to my thing anyway. That's what you do.
We're off air.